Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Spoonmore, President of the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Elect Connect Forum. This is the second of two events in our Elect Connect series that the Chamber has hosted this spring. Last month, we heard from the City Council candidates, and tonight we'll hear from all three of our Democratic candidates for Mayor of the City of Bloomington. Serving as moderator for the forum tonight is Paul Helmke, former president and CEO of the Brady Center and three-term mayor of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Mr. Helmke is currently a professor of practice at the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs and the founding director of the Civic Leaders Living Learning Center. Each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute opening statement. The opening statements will then be followed by a series of questions asked by Mr. Helmke. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the questions, and we'll conclude the forum then with a 1-minute closing statement from each of the candidates. And before we get started, I want to take a moment to recognize our sponsors for this evening. The Chamber is fortunate to have businesses that support our advocacy and public policy efforts. Please help me in thanking today's sponsors. And if you could, please hold your applause until after we mention each of them. Comcast Business Class, Indiana University, the Bloomington Board of Realtors, the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, the Building Association of South Central Indiana, or as we affectionately say, BASCI, CFC Properties, Smithville Communications, and the Mill. And then a special thank you to our partners at Indiana University for hosting the event tonight at President's Hall on the most beautiful college campus of America. Let's give all of these sponsors a big round of applause. Thanks again. This event would not have been possible without our sponsors' generous support and commitment to the Chamber, which strengthens the voice of business in our community. We also want to thank the Chamber's Board of Directors, as well as our elected officials that are here tonight. On our Board of Directors that are present, Alyssa Wooler, Ron Walker, Brian Shockney, Don Weiler, and David Ferguson. Thank you all for joining us. Elected officials who are here present are County Council members Jennifer Crossley and County Council member Peter Iverson. Thank you for joining us. Now let's introduce our candidates. Sitting right next to me is Don Griffin. Mr. Griffin was appointed deputy mayor in March of 2021 and served in this role through December of 2022. He's also a realtor in town and owns Griffin Realty. Susan Sandberg. Ms. Sandberg has been a city council representative at large for 16 years and is a 4-time city council president, also a former Indiana University administrator with the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs. And Carrie Thompson. Ms. Thompson is director of Indiana University Center for Rural Engagement, which she has been in since 2018. Prior to that, she was the CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Monroe County for 20 years. So, thank you all for being here tonight. We're excited to hear your plans for leading Bloomington forward. And Mr. Helmke, I think we'll let you take it from here.
We do have a few seats down here in the front still, over here on the side, if you want to get a seat. If you like standing for an hour and a half, you can do that, but you got seats here and up front too. So if you want a seat, do that now instead of interrupting the speakers too. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Chamber, for inviting me. Thank you, candidates, for showing. Thank you, audience. I want to recognize one person in one group before we start. One is former Mayor Fernandez is here. I have a soft spot for mayors, having been a mayor, and I served at the same time as John. So John, good to see you again. Also wanted to, I invited a number of my students here this evening from the Civic Leaders Center. So we have a number of first-year undergraduates and some that are a few years later that are interested in civic engagement and local affairs. I told them that one of these people would be mayor for the rest of their undergraduate career, and they ought to be here tonight. So I wanted to thank my students for being here tonight. You've heard the ground rules for the evening. I might just say I'm very appreciative of these three candidates for doing this. I figured I ran in 9, if I count contested primaries, I ran in 9 contested primary or general elections in my career. They have gone to more forums than I did over all 9 of those contested elections. I'm surprised they can't give each other a speech if they were asked to. So it's great to have candidates who are so willing to meet with the public on a regular basis. So that's a good thing too. We're going to start out with 1-minute opening statements. The candidates drew lots to see who would go first, and we're going to start in order with Carrie Thompson. Carrie.
Thank you so much to the Chamber. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much to the Chamber and the other hosts for hosting this important forum tonight. I came to Bloomington for the first time on my bicycle in 1995, and at that moment, even though I had been all the way across the United States, I chose Bloomington as my hometown. And I moved here and worked for Habitat for Humanity for 20 years because Bloomington is so exceptional. And part of what makes Bloomington so exceptional is you all, the business owners, the leaders who give us the personality and the quality of place that we've all come to expect in our wonderful hometown. I am married to Babak Saraje, my husband, and together we have 5 children. And as you heard, I direct the Center for Rural Engagement. I have spent my entire professional career working with people at grassroots levels to accomplish their visions of creating community that works. And that's what I will do as your mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Susan. And by the way, happy birthday, Susan.
Thank you very much. Small business is a significant contributor to our regional economy and within Bloomington, a driver of growth and employment. So thank you for all that you do and for hosting us this evening. I'm Susan Sandberg, 16 years seasoned city council member, running for mayor of Bloomington, and I'm committed to support enterprise and small business growth. The Chamber of Commerce takes the lead in business advocacy and keeps current with local, state, and federal legislation that impacts all Bloomington residents. I enjoy attending your events and partnering with Chamber to establish good working relationships in economic development. A Sandberg administration will include a small business advisory roundtable to gather ideas as we review processes with planning and zoning to reduce uncertainty and time for permitting and other changes to enhance small business opportunities. Just some of the ways that my experienced leadership will help support our small business community. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Susan. Don.
I'm Don Griffin. I'm a 52-year Bloomington resident. This is where I grew up. I'm the son of Donald and Marlene Griffin, a police officer and a secretary. My public service didn't just start a year ago. I've been doing the work side by side with you all for decades. I have experience in business, nonprofit arts and education, public service, and government. Founder of Griffin Realty Holdings, president of the RDC, or serving as deputy mayor. I have been here, and I will be here the next 50 years, hopefully, right? I am Bloomington, and I'm asking you to believe in Bloomington, but I can't do it alone. Together we will be more sustainable. Together we will create a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible community of belonging. Together we will create more housing opportunities for all. Together we will help lift up economic and cultural growth, better paying job opportunities. I'm Don Griffin, and I want to be your next mayor. Believe in Bloomington.
Thank you. I'm Paul Helmke. Not only am I working in Bloomington, I went to school here as an undergrad, and I was born here. And I'm running. Oh, I get it. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to get out of the. I was born in Bloomington, but sorry about that. We've got a number of questions to cover tonight, and we'll rotate who starts each time. Hopefully, I can keep track of that. So this question we'll start with Susan. What would your priorities be in your first 90 days in office?
Well, the first 90 days obviously are going to be very orientation related with respect to getting acquainted with all the staff, all the department heads, and having very robust discussions about how we're going to be moving forward. I'm very familiar, of course, with all the different departments of the city of Bloomington, from having been on the council, having reviewed the budgets for the past 16. We've got another budget coming up soon to take a look at. And the finances will be a very important part of the understanding of the new mayor as we get started with setting the tone and setting the direction and establishing the relationships with all the people who work at the city of Bloomington. Those individuals are critical, and certainly my priorities for being the mayor of Bloomington will be taking care of our internal customers, which are our employees. These are the individuals whose boots are on the ground, who keep the wheels turning quite literally. With our staff, both our fire and police and sanitation workers and utilities, it's very critical to get off to a very good start with the individuals that are going to be providing the services to all of Bloomington that you all pay your taxes for and that you expect to be excellent and help you in your individual lives and help you in your business life. So setting the tone, having good relationships, working inside City Hall. Of course, I have an advantage in already knowing many of the individuals that are there. Thank you.
Done.
90 days. I already started 2 years ago as the deputy mayor. The deputy mayor runs the city. All 850 employees report to the deputy mayor. Every department head reports to the deputy mayor. There are projects that I've been working on and preparing our community for that I'm going to continue with. I know the staff. I know what needs to change. I know I have a vision that I've already started working on. I think the first 90 days, one thing that I want to do is I want benchmarks. I want every different department to look at another community that does it well, that does whatever they do well, and I want them to study that. And the next phase of Bloomington is being good and being the best and being the benchmark. So the first 90 days, that's what I will have my staff look into.
Carrie?
I plan to be equipped to start at a sprint. For all of my life, really most of my professional life, I have been the top level executive at the organizations that I've led, both the Center for Rural Engagement at Habitat for Humanity, and in both of those organizations I have created a distributed leadership model. And with that leadership team, we work in 90-day increments towards a big vision. And by doing that, every member of the team, and the team is critically important, every member of the team knows what their share of that vision is. And they have that part of the mission to accomplish, and we work to get it done. I plan to have an effective transition team so that by January 1st, I really should have an idea of where the community wants us to head and how effective we can be in doing that. Of course, getting that team together is the most critical piece. Without it, and without you and your input along the way, our city can never be as great as it could be. And that's the critical element of my leadership, bringing people back to the table and listening to you, our leaders and our residents, to work together to get things done.
Next question, we'll start with Don. Dealing with regulation. The business community often feels that there are cumbersome procedures, lengthy delays, unpredictability when navigating the various permitting and zoning processes. in city government. Sounds familiar to me from Fort Wayne too. If elected, what is your plan to address bureaucratic obstacles and inefficiencies that contribute to this problem?
Education, streamlining. Some of the barriers that are there are for everyone's safety. So there probably will not be an elimination of barriers, but better educating the community and business owners on how to get through the process, and streamlining that process through electronic means and all that other good stuff is where we would start. But the stuff that's there, I know we hate it. I'm a business owner as well, so I know what you go through. But I've also been on this other side of how community works, how to run a community, and I know why the barriers are there, and they'll remain. Thank you.
Carrie?
I plan to streamline processes as much as I possibly can. And that starts by looking at why policies are in place and making sure that we have a completely transparent process in what we do. For my last 9 years at Habitat for Humanity, we were the largest single-family home developer in the county. I know what it takes to create neighborhoods. And I know that our housing crisis is only being slowed down and actually being caused to be more expensive by the processes that are in place. What we need is transparency, not fewer regulations. In fact, I actually think that if we sat down as a community and articulated what a livable, beautiful Bloomington looked like with some detail, we could write those things down. And even if there were more criteria, if the system was transparent and the people creating our built environment had that checklist ahead of time, we could create housing and a built environment that actually is much more beautiful and inviting, and there wouldn't be $250,000 of changes in architects and engineering orders when we got to Plan Commission. We can do both. We can streamline and get the product that we need. We are Bloomington. We know how to do this.
Susan?
I'm no stranger to the Unified Development Ordinance. It was a multi-year process. I was in on the ground floor as a member of the City Council and taking the comprehensive plan, putting it into our current code that we currently live with. At the time that was written, we were told, hey, this is a 3-ring binder. We can always pull out some pages and put some new ones in. So trust me on this. That will be part of the first 90 days of taking a look at our codes, taking a look at that UDO, and seeing where we can make some corrections, make some incentives that make some sense with respect to housing. I recently attended one of the EVP that the BEDC put together and had the opportunity to be in a workshop that was talking about streamlining process. And I hear that a lot. I hear it from you in the business community. And one of the things that I have been listening to is how do we fast track things? How do we make things more quickly resolved in order to go ahead and move forward with your projects that are expensive, and time is money. So streamlining and efficiency is important, but where do we start? I mentioned in my opening, I intend to have many roundtable discussions with you first. I want to hear what your concerns are, where the holdups are, where you think things are unfair, and then of course I need to go back to the staff responsible for the various permitting and the various processes and see from their side of it what they might be willing to adjust, where we might make some switches in the workforce. So I'll be working on that. Thank you.
Next question is one of those boring ho-hum issues, annexation. Annexation continues to be controversial to Monroe County residents, businesses. If elected, what will you do? Will you continue the current efforts to annex property outside the city limits? Will you put the annexation plans to an end? Or will you try some other approach? And we're starting now with Carrie.
Annexation has been the hot topic, and I think people are passionate on both sides, but one thing that most people agree on is that the process has been broken. And this has been another example of top-down leadership where an announcement was made about what we are going to do to people instead of with people. In my administration, we will work with the community, and annexation is another example of this. I do think that the city boundaries need to expand. It's time to do that. And we have county residents and others who are really sore about this process. If we are going to expand the city boundaries, we should be opening the doors to City Hall. We should be going to the neighborhoods and answering people's questions about what it really means. People have a lot of misgivings and a lot of myths in their minds about what this really means, and they deserve to be listened to, and their concerns need to be addressed to the best of the city's ability.
Susan.
Annexation is a perfectly legal process. It is a necessary process, so make no mistake, I do not oppose the idea of annexation, but this annexation I do oppose. I was one of 3 on the council that voted no. It's been another multi-year process that started at the very start of this administration. And it was a surprise. It was a surprise to us on the council. It was a surprise to the county council. And then we started to scramble. Ooh, this is big, this is huge, this is kind of overwhelming. How do we sit down with our colleagues and try to pare it down? Well, no sooner did the city council and county council start to do that, the lawsuit hit, and of course that put things on hold for 4 years. Coming back to the process, it was handled in a way that was not respectful, I do not believe. Having listened to the many county constituents during the process of trying to reset the tone, I feel the litigation is ongoing and there's no end in sight to it. It has caused harm to the relationship between the city and the county, and I feel very strongly that it also is going to have an impact on the citizens of Bloomington. We already have strains in our service systems. We already are having a hard time with our police staffing, our fire staffing, our personnel, and to have an expanded territory for the city of Bloomington to then be responsible for might put some stresses on Bloomington, in addition to possibly interfering with some affordability out in the county. And so for those many reasons, the ill will, I would like to stop it. I will review the law and then see what we can do to put an end to this, start over.
Don.
Not very popular, but annexation in the Griffin administration will continue. The process, we must grow, right? There was a long time that we didn't, years that we didn't. It's happened. The state tried to stop it, right? The state tried to stop Bloomington from growing. If you're a Bloomington citizen and you're not upset about that, then that's a problem. Those outside of the city limits, currently right now, a lot of you talk about not having a voice in your community. You will then now have that voice once you're part of the city. Look, I grew up in Van Buren Park, which is on the other side of 37. I wasn't a true Bloomington resident until I was an adult. But I lived and I felt, I wouldn't have known that. As a child, I didn't know that. I was from Bloomington. When 87, 81, I was downtown celebrating when the championship happened, just like every other Bloomingtonian, right? But my parents, we really didn't have that voice. So folks outside of city limits, it's time for your voice to be heard. Folks within the city limits who are paying their fair taxes need to be more upset by the folks who are getting most of what you're getting for half off. Think about that.
Before we go to the next question, we do have a few empty seats down here. If any of you standing in the back want to find a seat, we've got a few over on the side, a few over here, a couple other ones too. Let's move on to public safety. And we'll address this question first to Susan. Many chamber members indicate that they routinely experience negative impacts from illicit behaviors and nuisance crimes occurring in and around their businesses. If elected, what new policies will you create or suggest to deter low-level crimes and illicit activities from disrupting commerce in our community?
Public safety is one of the foundational platforms that I will be running for mayor on. As everyone knows, I have been a very outspoken advocate on behalf of our police department. We're losing staffing. That's an issue. And I do have communications with the business. I just had a nice conversation just last week with a variety of owners of businesses in the downtown concerned about the nuisance issues that you're talking about. These are very complex issues when we're dealing with unhoused individuals and people who are causing some concerns for the surrounding neighborhoods and the surrounding businesses. Our police department will respond to things when they are called, but again, we're dealing with issues that don't necessarily elevate themselves to be a crime. We need to do a better job with our mental health in our community. We need to do a better job with dealing with the addiction problem that we have, because the police are very much not in a position to be all things in that regard. We have the Stride Center, which is a wonderful diversion program that is a wonderful partnership between Centerstone and Cook and the city and the county. We need to have more opportunities like that to address some of the issues that you're experiencing in the downtown. But once again, let's sit down and talk. Let's have some roundtables about public safety and equity. Let's hear from the police, their side of it. Let's hear from the social workers that we have on board now. Let's hear from the nonprofit community that are providing services for our unhoused. And let's not equate criminal activity with housing and homelessness.
Done.
Susan, you said a lot of good things there. It does start with communicating. Bloomington too often is in silos. We've got business owners, and you are the heart of our community. Without downtown business owners, we become something else. We become a community with a big box, and that's all we have. But then we have folks who are advocating for folks that need, that have mental health and substance abuse. And we can do both. As deputy mayor, I would get calls all the time, and people would say, what are you doing about this? Half the folks were wondering why we couldn't just remove folks, and the other half were saying, we need to do more. We've got to do more. We've got to listen to our community members, all of our community, our business owners. We've got to listen to the folks that advocate for the ones that need the most help. That is the true Bloomington, right? We can be a community that does hard things, right? Being the best at the whole idea of believing in Bloomington means that we will try to be the best at handling substance abuse and mental health crisis and the unhoused. But it also means that our downtown needs to be safe and secure for all.
Carrie?
I'm glad to hear that we want to do better. Part of the reason that I am running is because I think that Bloomington needs change. And frankly, I have gotten really tired of hearing mental health and substance use confused with unhoused. Housing is a challenge, and we also have people who are at crisis levels of mental health and substance use disorder. And I want to give first credit to the incredible work that is being done with our unhoused community by several nonprofits and by the Heading Home Coalition. That's about housing. The question was about nuisance behaviors. We can, in Bloomington, create a plan that treats people with dignity and offers them a path to contribute to our community and to get the help that they need. We can do that. We already have a coalition started with housing and Heading Home. We can do the equivalent, and in my administration, we absolutely will with mental health and substance use disorder. That is what we need. And we definitely need to give the backup that is deserved to our public safety officials. Because right now, they're on the front lines and they're not mental health professionals.
On a related public safety issue, this goes to Don first. According to the 7th Annual State of Public Safety Report, police calls are up 14% or so from last year. Violent crimes up 5.8%. Gun crimes rising. These are happening while the Bloomington Police Department is experiencing a shortage of sworn officers. If elected, will hiring more police officers be a priority for your administration? What is the ideal number of police officers to employ, and how are you going to accomplish this?
In a what is it called? Currently, we need 105 police officers. We have a brand new contract that just started on January the 1st for the police. I think they make $70,000 a year starting out, $100,000 down payment assistance for any police officer or even a fire person. We've got other things. I created a position that is a position for recruitment that was never, we never had a person who would recruit constantly. The new police officers, the young police officers, they're staying in communities at around 2 years or less, and they're moving to something else. So we have to change how we recruit. I put $35 million brand new police station, state-of-the-art police station that is going to be built at Showers Complex. So we've got a lot of things to do. So, or we've got a lot of things that have been done. I think the recruitment piece is going to change things. I think the higher salaries, a 4-year contract that for everyone that starts at 70 and it goes between 3.5 and 5 a year. I think we're doing good work. Let's see how it's going to work.
Carrie.
I've been a top-level executive for 25 years. The most expensive thing you can do is lose somebody. Then you have to replace them and train them. So I would start with retention of the great officers that we already have on our police force while we're working in tandem to try to hire the rest that we need. The city budget is allocated at 105 officers, but the studies I've read actually call for up to 120. We have never hired so many police officers as we have during this administration because we've never lost so many. So I hope that that recruitment officer is also doing exit interviews to find out what is causing people to leave. And I've done ride-alongs. I've talked to officers. I've listened to them. I know they didn't want that new police station at Showers. And I know that there are other things that we can do. Pay is part of it, but we also have to look at the whole package. How are we retaining the people that keep us safe? And once we get them on board, how can we ensure that they don't leave?
Susan.
I have an outstanding relationship with the Bloomington Police Department, and I have for several years now. When they first started sounding the alarm to us on the council that things were not well in their department with the amount of loss of the police officers. It is more than pay, but it is pay. We've got to be competitive in how we pay our officers because we're losing them, well-trained, very mature, very good police officers. We're losing them to other communities that do want to pay a competitive wage for police officers. We're losing diversity hires to other communities who are also valuing that type of caliber of police officer. So we have a problem. We must recruit, we must retain. And how do we do that? By listening to the police officers, by hearing what they're saying, listening to all the issues that they're dealing with. And by the way, let me make another issue. Crime is not being committed by our unhoused per se. We talked about the nuisances, the needles and the vagrancy and the vandalism. But the violent crime is being done by the big guys that are coming here from Indianapolis and Chicago and other places, selling the stuff to our victims, selling stuff to the addicted. that we're having a hard time with many of our unhoused populations. So, to help fight crime, yes, we will get that police station and that police department up to speed. In a Sandberg administration, you can count on that, and they know it.
I'm sorry. When we talk about,
I'm going to give you a time. And then our next question was supposed to be in retention. A number of you touched on that. I see there's some follow-up. I'll give each of you another 30 seconds for other comments on what's been talked about, plus retention.
when we talk about, I need us to change how we say things, right? When we talk about big city folks, it is a dog whistle, right? You put my child, my 21-year-old black child, in danger when you say that. I need us to stop saying that. You want to talk about recruiting and retention of people of color? Indiana University, IU Health, everybody that needs that wants people of color to live here, they do not want to hear dog whistles about people from Detroit or Indianapolis living here. And that being the problem, that being the drug problem, or what have you. That's got to stop.
Carrie?
I'll just go back to my comments that we do need a comprehensive plan for dealing with mental health and substance use disorder. And that plan needs to have the stakeholders at the table, people with lived experience, our incredible nonprofits, and the organizations that treat mental health for a living. Those are the folks we need at the table. In listening sessions that I've been doing since July, I am hearing more about this than any other issue. It's time, Bloomington, and people want to help.
Susan?
And the drive-by shootings are happening by the people coming here to sell the drugs to people. No offense meant by referring to where these individuals who are selling the drugs to our community are coming from. But once you talk to the Bloomington Police Department, you get a handle on where is the violent crime coming from. You're going to get an honest answer from them. We need to hear from them. What are causing the increases in violence in our community, and why are they really strained to the breaking point? Because their staffing levels are so low. And it is really hard to stay on top of all the criminal activity with a short-staffed department.
Let's move on to another topic. City of Bloomington's fortunate to be a wonderful place, as we all know, to live, work, have fun. What's your vision for making Bloomington a destination that young professionals will want to stay in long term? We'll start with Carrie.
House them close to those amenities. Young people want to be able to walk to restaurants and bars. They want to be able to get to our parks easily. And they want to have a vibrant community that calls them into belonging. And we do have incredible quality of place here in Bloomington. But we are missing the boat on retaining our 25 to 35-year-olds. Part of that is housing, of course. But part of that also is the ecosystem of what jobs are available. And we really have to focus on leaning into the incredible work that's being done at the mill right now. We have the Bloomington Remote program that is attracting some incredible people to our community. And then we need to look at the resources that young people need. Where are we with daycare? Not in a great place. Where are we with free pre-K? Our school system has started working on it. We need to get there. So let's look at the amenities that we need in addition to our incredible parks and artistic events that are happening, and ensure that Bloomington is truly welcoming for everybody.
Susan.
Well, having worked at the O'Neill School and working with incredibly gifted and talented and young people, we have a brain drain problem with Indiana University here, attracting many young people, but in getting jobs, they end up having to leave Bloomington for the kinds of jobs that they want. and the kinds of jobs that they're prepared for. And so you in the Chamber of Commerce have an opportunity to work with the city and partner. How do we increase our jobs that pay great wages that will keep young people here in the community? The Trades District and the new tech center that's going up that John Fernandez will be partnering with Pat East in developing, that's going to be a huge game changer in that regard to try to create the kinds of jobs that will keep younger people here. And the younger people who are here in the community, I would look to many of the amenities that this city has, the strengths that we have in our arts, and having a comedy club in our downtown, and having great theater and great music. And a lot of this is because of Indiana University and the incredible world-class arts that they have here. But the city of Bloomington is known as an arts destination for all kinds of great festivals, music of all kinds. And so in terms of attractions, things to do, obviously we have a pretty good place given the academic strengths of IU and City of Bloomington, and we need to do more in terms of keeping the jobs here, that students will stay in the community because they're good jobs.
Don?
So you're talking about what I call the lonely decade, the 23 to 33 year olds who come here. We can't seem to recruit nor retain them. Even if the jobs are great, they are not staying for lack of things to do. That's why when I talk about the arts and cultural and music destination, Bloomington being this mecca, this is on my website, folks. I've been talking about this. I'm glad you guys are coming for it too. But I've been talking about this for a while, that Bloomington needs to be an arts, cultural, and music destination. We've got Brain Drain at the School of Music, and we have more artists and musicians and poets per capita than any place in the entire United States. I had as deputy mayor, I had a survey done, a research done by Trahan, an amazing architectural company. They were looking at the Waldron, and I said, I want you to look at our community and see what we need to make this happen. We've got the people, we've got the resources here. We just have not been intentional about becoming this arts and cultural mecca. And that will help with the jobs. These folks don't have anything to do during the night. We need to change it. Boldly Bloomington, what you want to call it, but that's what we need to do.
There's this question will start with Susan. There's a perception among many that strained relations among city and county elected officials are preventing progress on a number of local issues like housing availability, convention center expansion, addiction and mental health care, new jail facility. How will you work to find common ground with county officials on these issues and make progress on repairing these important intergovernmental relationships? Susan.
Well, in my position on the city council, I'm doing that now and have been doing that for some time. It is a strained relationship, and I think much of it started at the beginning with the whole issue of annexation being such a sudden and drastic shift that was not, I don't think, as respectful it should have been with communicating with our county colleagues before that was put forward. I had a meeting recently with a group of people, stakeholders, and it was held in a home that had city council, county council, people that were on the justice committee looking in the jail, people from New Leaf, New Life, people with Care Not Cages, talking about the jail, and that was the most productive conversation. It wasn't a public meeting, it was an opportunity for people that had a piece of that issue sitting down and talking together. It can be done, it will be done in a Sandberg administration, because I know the value of sitting down and having discussions before big initiatives are rolled out. You get that stakeholder buy-in first before you start telling people this is what we're going to do, it's good for you. And so city-county relationships, I think, are fairly good at this point. I also voted for the CIB to move forward with the expansion of the convention center. I thought that was the wisest path forward and the most respectful path forward. And so that is just one of many examples of things that I am doing now as a sitting council person that I will do as mayor of Bloomington.
Don?
You know, they're on a daily basis, and folks can't see this, but on a daily basis, hundreds of opportunities where the city and the county and Indiana University are working together, whether it's police, whether it's fire, whether it's streets. We have a great relationship. I think we see these large things, and these are things that will change our community for good, for a very long time. And it's okay. It's okay to have disagreements. We can work through disagreements. It's just when we stop talking, that's when we run into problems. But creating a better community, sometimes we gotta have a little tension. I do not mind talking to the county to try to get some of these things resolved and done. I will tell you though, as the mayor of the city of Bloomington, I am the biggest advocate for what is best for Bloomington, right? We can say what we want right now because we're not mayor, but when we become the mayor, it changes. And so I will always put Bloomington first. With the rest of the surrounding communities in mind, we are the hub. So we want the surrounding counties, we want our own county to do well.
Okay. Carrie?
I'm frankly surprised to hear that the city-county relationship is fairly good, because that's not what we hear as residents of Bloomington. And what we hear instead is that the executives are not speaking to one another. And it is true that at the ground level, we have people working for both the city and the county who work together really well. But the mayor sets the tone. The top level executive sets the tone. And if that tone is that if you don't do it my way, I'm not gonna come play the game, it doesn't give partnership a shot. We have to come to the table with something other than a demand or something other than a full-baked project exactly the way we want it. Disagreements are great. In my administration, I will use feedback to help improve my vision for where we're going. And I will start long before a proposal is put forward, listening to the public and listening to the stakeholders. So whatever plan comes forward, it should come with a whole coalition of people who are willing to work on it and improve it together. That's how we get things done.
Next question, all three of you touched on this briefly, specifically about the convention center. The food and beverage tax was passed in 2017. We don't have a new Monroe County Convention Center yet. When will it happen? How will it happen? What's the best governance structure for the convention center? Let's start with Don.
Wow, that's a good question. I hope it happens soon. I think going forward with both the county and city, I think this is a great idea. It must be world class. I'm just going to tell you that now. Just a bigger convention center, just a bigger convention center will not work. It needs to have it needs to have an identity. It needs to be flexible. It needs to include arts and cultural impact. Like it should be a flexible space. We should be able to have concerts there. It can't just be a bigger space. So going forward, good idea. We'll push it through, but it's only going to work if both parties, county and city, want to do a world-class product. I don't want mediocre. We should not want mediocre. We're Bloomington. Everything that we do, we should strive to be the best at.
Carrie?
I think a county-city partnership on this is essential, and I thought the proposal of the CIB with 3 members from the city and 3 members from the county And one member that is appointed by those 6 people was a great balance. I agree. It's past time for the convention center. In fact, our study is now so old, I'm not sure we know what the convention center needs to be. But what I do know is that a great convention center is an anchor for the community that attracts tourism, and that tourism should be fed by some awesome local restaurants and boutiques that are close by, and it creates a center just off the square, right? Another place that all of us will also enjoy. I think that we need to look at what a post-pandemic convention center is, how people are gathering, what kinds of meetings and events are going to happen there, and how we're attracting people. But then when we create it together, it should be something so incredible that people come here and say, what is this Bloomington? It's incredible, just like I did in 1995.
Susan?
The mention of the convention center needing to be a world-class convention center, this is kind of the beginning of where the tensions erupted between the city and the county. As if the county, and this is the Monroe County Convention Center, it is not run by the city of Bloomington, it is the Monroe County Convention Center, and Bloomington does have a stake in it, absolutely we do. The lion's share of the food and beverage taxes came from the local restaurants and surrounding area. And so the partnership did need to happen, but there were strains from the get-go when it was thought that only the city of Bloomington has the ability to make this a world-class place. You people in the county don't have that ability, so we need to take over and be more in charge of this. Well, that sets a tone from the very beginning that is not partnership. And so that's what we need to reset. We need to get back with the county. It is a convention center that we have all known and loved. It is time for it to expand. It is past time for it to expand. But we don't tell other partners how it's going to go. We need to work with those partners to come together. And do we want it to be a great convention center that's a good community gathering space, a good place maybe for the arts to have a home, as well as doing what the convention center does, which is to host conventions and to bring other tourists and other people from other communities to experience what Bloomington is all about. But this needs to be a better give and take between city and county, and not my way or the highway, our plan is the only plan, and the conflicts that ensued over that. It's time to move forward.
We've already talked briefly, or some of you have talked briefly about housing as a major concern. With the shortage of housing being a concern, would you support expanding sewers beyond the existing scope, and if so, how much more and in which direction? Start with Carrie.
I would start with ensuring that we have adequate sewer in the current city boundaries and those proposed for annexation if that is moving forward. Right now, our basic infrastructure does need some attention. And so I want to ensure that that infrastructure is adequate. Now, sewers are sort of the magic sauce when you are creating any kind of new development. And where they go, the development will go. And so I think that before we determine where those will go and if we can expand them, we need to really have a vision for where it's appropriate and what our basic housing plan is. That's on my website. I have a 5-point plan for creating the housing that we need. We need a strategy. We don't just need good ideas. Nothing will happen well. And so just providing sewer where anybody asks for it is not intentional enough. We need a plan that we can work on together as a community so we know exactly where we want it to go and ensure that we can service it well once it's there.
Susan.
The City of Bloomington Utilities, of course, is a ratepayer system, right? So the operations that they do to keep our water systems clean, stormwater, sewage, that is paid by us in our water bills, and we've got a sanitation bill that's on there as well. But utilities and infrastructure are critically important to the health of Bloomington. And one of the issues that I have with expansion and growth and building and building and building is, do we have the infrastructure to support all the fast-moving and large developments that we see popping up? With respect to doing utility work outside of the corporate boundaries, that of course is an issue for Vic Kelson and the Utilities Department. I understand now there is a hiatus due to the fact that we have this litigation regarding annexation that is no end in sight. We don't know how that's going to be resolved, and I cannot blame them for not wanting to make promises about how they extend, because it depends on their ability to do that, right? They work within a budget, they work within the fee structure. Sometimes we have to raise the rates for our utilities in order to accommodate the needs of the utilities department and all the incredible work they do. We have an old system, we have pipes that break, we all know that. We have flooding problems, we have sewer runoff issues. And so we need to make sure that the essential city services of the city of Bloomington are in good shape first before we start expanding.
Done.
Folks, there are no new sewers. A sewer is a kind of a living thing that always needs to be upgraded and always needs to change. Our sewer system, our utility systems are good. They are good. They are exceptional for a community of our size. It can, if you're asking whether or not I believe that it should be expanded past the city boundaries until annexation is finalized. I think there may be opportunities for some voluntary annexation, especially as we go up north. There's a whole section called Butcher Pool that goes up north. It's set up it's a sewer system that's set up to go north towards Oliver Winery, towards Sample, and it hasn't been utilized yet. So there are opportunities to increase put more sewer on, or hook on more sewers, but this idea that we've got this failing utilities company is completely false. Just want to say that.
Everybody doing okay? Hold in there. We've got about 3 more topics I want to cover before we get to closing statements. So got a good discussion here. Candidates are doing a great job keeping in the time limits. I'm going to combine a couple questions that were proposed. Basically, and we're going to start with Susan, but it's about how to strengthen business relations between the business community and government. How are you going to maintain open lines of communication? Will you have a dedicated city rep responsible for being a liaison? Do you plan to attend chamber events, meet with chamber staff to get their insight? How do you keep the lines of communication open between City Hall and the business community? Susan.
Well, of course, I will keep those good relationships going as I have as a member of the City Council. As mayor, of course, we will be having a lot of meetings, a lot of sit-downs with all kinds of communities, including the business community. It's critically important. I do need to remind you that we do have an Economic and Sustainable Development Department at the City of Bloomington, and those directors that are involved there already have great working relationships with all of you and the BEDC. And all the growth startups for encouraging businesses, both small and making sure that our basic sector businesses continue to be strong. And I think the best thing we can do in the public sector in order to maintain good relationships with the private sector is to make sure that we're taking care of the affairs of Bloomington. And that is public safety, affordability, better collaborations all across the board with all kinds of community stakeholders. And then last but not least, and attention to essential city services. And I would disagree a little bit with my colleague to my left that, yes, Bloomington has great department heads. We have great services that we provide. But there are some failings in the system that we need to pay attention to. We need to listen to the boots on the ground workers in these departments who are telling us we're having some stresses and strains here. We need to shore that up. We need to make sure our staffing levels are up and our leadership in the departments are doing their jobs, and that we are delivering to the tax-paying residents, including you, the business community.
Don?
You know, a lot of our business owners are actually not, they don't live within the city limits. And so sometimes I think their voices are getting lost because you provide the character of who we are as a community. And so I think we need to do a much, much better job of bringing you in and listening. We need more folks. We need more opportunity to invite you into the building. We need more of you on some of our boards and commissions when it comes to housing, when it comes to utilities, when it comes to that kind of thing. Even if you don't live within the community of Bloomington, you provide so much. So I think going forward, I think that needs to be strengthened. Our relationship with the business community needs to be strengthened if we're going to move forward and continue to grow.
Carrie?
I absolutely would like a great relationship with the business community. The business community is not one entity. You know, in this room, I see people who have storefront locations. I see other people who probably have an office in their pickup truck. And so just like any other group of people, I think there's no one size fits all in how we make the government accessible. So I absolutely would like some trusted advisors, but I'd also really love some ideas from the business community on how the government can better serve you. Because you are the lifeblood of our community. You are what people see when they come here. You are how they find their homes. You are their employers. And so you have perspectives that are critically important to the success of our community. And so making a government work for you and ensuring that you have access to the mayor and also to the Economic Development Department is really key to the success of our community.
Let's move to finances. We'll start with Don. Apparently the last published audit of the city's finances other than for federal grants was in 2017. Apparently the state auditor has noted that some of the city's financial statements were not in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. What will you do to ensure that the citizens have confidence that their money is properly accounted for?
I think that actually got changed. I'm almost sure of that, by the way. And it was something very, very minor. So that statement is being blown out of proportion. All the documents that you need to see are online. If you go to the website, and folks, it's not my job. I'm sorry, it wasn't my administration, so it's not my job to defend. But a lot of these things, it's simple. A lot of these things can be found, and so I'm gonna say that. I'm not gonna try to make up something to say, you know, that things are gonna change. It's there.
Carrie?
As your mayor, I will never take credit without also taking responsibility when things are not going well. It is critically important to our taxpayers that we have an audit every single year and that is transparent. It is within the city's purview to hire an independent accounting firm that can get that audit done right away. In all of my years of executive leadership, I never closed out the books without immediately starting a private independent audit that was supervised not only by our top financial person on our staff team, but also by our treasurer. And then we made it available to our donors. That's their money. And our homeowners. That's their money. That's where their mortgages are. You're the taxpayers. Of course we owe you an audit. We owe you an incredible amount of transparency about where your dollars are. The council approves the budget, and I'm shocked that they haven't demanded an audit. We need it to understand that we are doing our best with your money.
Susan?
As a sitting member of the City Council, and I've been through 16 budget cycles, we're about to start our next, we have been asking the administration to make those budgets more understandable, not only for us. We have many, many questions throughout the 4 nights of budget hearings. We have a budget advance coming up. We want to make sure that the budgeting is understood not only by us, who have the fiscal responsibility to oversee it, but to the public. And so I will certainly, as mayor, one of the first orders of business is to understand the budgeting, to work very closely with the controller. I've been having meetings with, I'm very fortunate to have some colleagues at the O'Neill School who specialize in public finance that I've been meeting with about ways that we can make the budget a little bit more user-friendly for the public to understand it, and even for the City Council to be able to, when we ask questions about what line is this and what did this go for, that we have that transparency of information. We do the job every year through a cumbersome process. The department heads, of course, sit down early on with the controller and the mayor to determine how they're going to write the next year's budget. But as mayor, I can assure you that the finance and the fiscal responsibility and the transparency will be a #1 priority for me. We have an almost $230 million budget that we are going to be taking a look at this year. And this is certainly a critical function of a mayor.
Thank you. My mention at Fort Wayne, when I started as mayor, we started an comprehensive annual financial report. There are things that can be done that help with transparency. Tied to the last question, and our final question before closing, it's also with finances. Even though there have been questions like we just addressed, the city's very fortunate to have survived the pandemic without significant losses of revenue. Reports filed with the state show several funds with relatively large balances. In addition, next year the city will be receiving substantial new revenue from the income tax increase that passed last fall. What are your plans for using all of this money? And we'll start with Susan. Start with Carrie, excuse me.
Before I create any plans to spend that money, I need to understand where we really are with our financials. In any complex financial organization, you can have really big balances and even higher encumbrances. And so it is critically important to the city that we understand where we really are, and we're gonna probably need that audit to do that. I don't know where we are with our bonding capacity, because I haven't been able to find it on the website. Maybe some other resident with inside knowledge can. But before we create a plan to do a giant spend down, the public really needs to understand where we are financially. And we need to be fiscally accountable to our public and ensure that whatever plans we are making, they are being made in a sustainable way for our city's future.
Susan.
I'm waiting for you to pass me the mic. Like we had to do. Well, again, being someone who's very familiar with our budgets, this is extremely critical to know what the debt load is, to know what other expenditures we've committed to, and we do need to have healthy rainy day funds. That is obviously a part of the discussion. We listen to our controller. Jeff Underwood is someone that I have had a good working relationship with over these years. I trust that when he gives us information and tells us we are fine with our bonding capacity, and we have several different ways to go about whenever we need to bond for some new project. But I do have some concerns about some of the projects that this current administration has committed us to, notwithstanding the showers purchase that I did not agree with to house the Bloomington Police Department. I did not think that was a good idea, but that decision was made in a 5-4 vote. The council approved that. I did not vote for that. But we have to take a look at where the commitments have already been made by this administration before a new administration can start with any kind of a blank slate. It is critically important to be fiscally responsible, to take a look at where are the expenditures going, what can we cut down on, what are we doing that we no longer need to do, and what are the things that we need to shore up. I am looking at staff shortages as a critical issue. There's money not being spent on people that we need.
Done.
So, between me as a deputy mayor, sorry, it's like at band camp, you guys, come on, y'all don't know that joke? Okay. Anyway, as deputy mayor, the deputy mayor, the controller, and the mayor, they formulate a budget. I've helped formulate the last 2 budgets. Before I can answer what we would do with that money, I would have to talk to the controller. We would have to look at the buckets, because just because you have money doesn't mean some of that money is for roads, and it has to be used for roads. Some of that money is for staff, and it can't be intermingled. Some of that is for consulting. So you really need to know, hey, we've got $100 million. We don't have 100, but I need to know what that money can be spent on. Also, we look at a 10-year, when we're looking at the budget, we're looking at a 10-year, we're looking at it not just next year, but how is it affected in a 10-year period. So there's a lot that would have to happen before I can tell you what we're going to do with that awesome amount of money. But it'll be fun.
Okay. Well, we've gone through a lot of questions. Now a chance for each of the candidates to make a 1-minute closing, and we'll start with Susan.
Well, Bloomington is fortunate to have a thriving and diverse small business community. We're grateful for the leadership of the Chamber, as well as the Cook Center for Entrepreneurship, the Mill, SCORE, BEDC, Kelly School of Business, the Luddy School of Informatics, and others. It's my nature to collaborate, to create partnerships and opportunities to improve our local business climate. Help me take the next step in elevating the relationship between the public and private sectors. I thank you, and I look forward to the opportunity to serve you as the next mayor of Bloomington. I'm Susan Sandberg. Thank you.
Done.
Folks, I was made for this. Redevelopment Commission in my 20s, Vice President of the NAACP, co-founder of the Black Democratic Caucus, creator of Bloomington Living a Legend Award, President of the Redevelopment Commission, Deputy Mayor for the City of Bloomington. I got you through a flood, a pandemic, and the Trump presidency. Oh, come on, that was funny. Too many Republicans, okay. I'm the founder and president of Griffin Realty Holdings, winner of the Board of Realtors Humanitarian Award, City of Bloomington MLK Legacy Award, Visionary Award, and IU Bicentennial Award recipient. I don't want to sound braggadocious. I just really want this job. And they're not going to tell you what I've done, so I need to tell you what I've done. So I want you to believe in Bloomington, and please vote for me as your mayor. Thank you.
Carrie.
I have spent my life at the intersection of problems and possibility, always leading coalitions towards the possibility of what we can do together. Bloomington is really incredible, and we deserve a city government that's just as incredible. I want you to have a seat at the table. I want to hear from you, not only about the problems that we can solve together, but about the tremendous assets that we have in this community and how we can make them even greater. I have spent 25 years of my professional life in top-level executive leadership roles. I have a lot of experience managing complex budgets and large staffs. That's how you get things done. But you don't get things done by sitting in an office and creating plans on your own. That is not the way that we can create a better Bloomington. We must do it together. I'm Carrie Thompson, and I'd love to be your next mayor.
Before I step down, I just want to, first of all, thank the audience for being here. We need more people involved in politics and government. Give yourselves a round of applause. And then, it is not easy to run for office. I don't care what the office is, it's hard. And so I definitely want to have you give these three people another round.
Be done here in just a couple of minutes. But Paul said it very well. Thanks so much to our candidates. I know you have a grueling schedule this month and over the last few weeks, and we just wish you all the best in your campaigns leading up to May 2nd. Also, a big thanks to Paul for the terrific moderating tonight. Thank you so much. And also want to give another big thanks to all of our sponsors for their generous support of the Chamber and for making this event possible. And then I just want to take a few minutes here because I think it's important to note that a big part of the Chamber's mission is our focus on advocacy and public policy. We want to make Bloomington a place for our members and their organizations to thrive now and well into the future. And so along those lines, we take elections very seriously. And a goal with any election that impacts our community is to maximize voter participation. So now that you know more about these three candidates, I want to make a final pitch to everyone in the audience here. So we have three candidates on the ballot this year for mayor of Bloomington, an elected office that will undoubtedly have a significant impact on Bloomington businesses and our residents. And I believe that local government has more day-to-day impact on a person than any other level of government. And so it's important that we elect leaders that reflect the needs and desires of the community. And it's important that we have as many people as possible participating in the decision to elect our leaders. And that means if you're an eligible voter, we need you to vote this year. So what I'm about to say may come as a bit of a surprise, but mark my words on this. We will know who the next mayor of Bloomington is in less than a month. We'll know on May 2nd, to be exact. That's the day of the primary election. We won't have to wait until the general election in November because the decision on who will lead this city for the next 4 years will be made in a Democratic primary on Tuesday, May 2nd. And like it or not, that's just kind of the way that it works here in Bloomington. That's how the math is, and it has been that way for a few decades, and we don't expect that trend to change this year or really anytime soon. And as a former elected official myself, when I was running for office, I was always looking at the voter data in the primary election. And there's a lot of this data, and I know that these three candidates are probably looking at it daily at this point. And in my opinion, the most relevant data right now is the anticipated voter turnout numbers for the May 2 primary election. And the only way we can really project what these numbers will be is to look at the data from the most recent competitive primary election for city offices. And so that most recent primary election would have been 8 years ago in 2015, when we also had three candidates on the Democratic ballot running for mayor of Bloomington. Now, it's really astounding to me that in a city of over 85,000 people, only 7,027 people cast a ballot in the 2015 primary election. In other words, about 8% of the total population of Bloomington got to decide who leads the city for the next 4 years. And that's about what we expect again this year, 8%. And to me, that's sad because I know we can do a lot better than that. And then finally, I think it's important to note that although all of our candidates for mayor this year are running as Democrats, you yourself don't need to be a Democrat to vote in this election. If you're an independent or a Republican, you can still vote, and we encourage you to. You don't need to register with the Democratic Party. You simply just walk into your polling place, tell them you want to vote for mayor. But whatever you do, don't disenfranchise yourself in this election. The results are too important for this community. We need everyone to vote. And I need you to tell everyone you know to vote. Use the power of your vote to make your voice heard on May 2nd. And so with that, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We stand adjourned.